One night I was working late, and I knew I wasn't going to get home when I thought I was going to get home, so I called my wife up. I said, Christy, I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm going to be getting home pretty late this evening. And she said, no worries, honey. And at this time, I did most of the cooking around the house. She goes, I'll take care of dinner. I'll take care of the kids. You do what you need to do. I said, that's awesome. I'll pick up something fast food on the way home. And then it got really quiet on the other end of the phone. Anybody here know when it gets quiet on the other end of the phone, you're in trouble? Yeah, silence is bad when it's for your wife especially. And see, what had happened is what I heard my wife say was, listen, I'm going to take care of the kids. I'm going to take care of myself. You go do your thing. You take care of yourself. We got it covered over here. What my wife heard was, I would rather eat fast food than poison myself with your food. Two totally different things, but perspective is everything, isn't it? In a conversation. She heard something completely different in that conversation, and my name was now Mud. You know, we had to wade through that. Let me ask you something. Did you know men and women are wired a little bit differently? You ever notice that? Maybe that's a shocking new revelation to you, but I've noticed men and women are wired a little bit differently sometimes, and that results in some of these perspective and hearing issues we have sometimes in our relationships. As I kind of start that discussion today, watch this video with me real quick, if you could.
I liken it to the fact that God designed women to look at the world through pink sunglasses, and it colors what she sees. And she wears pink hearing aids, and it affects what she hears. And she speaks through a pink megaphone. And she expects everybody to know what she means by what she says. All of her girlfriends do. When she says through that pink megaphone into their pink hearing aids, I have nothing to wear. They say, oh, sweetie, we don't either, but we're going to go shopping later. Do you want to join us? Isn't that amazing? They all know what she means by what she says. He, on the other hand, has blue sunglasses, and it colors what he sees. He has blue hearing aids, and it affects what he hears. And he speaks through a blue megaphone. And he expects everybody to know what he means by what he says when he speaks through that blue megaphone. All of his buddies do. He speaks through that blue megaphone into their blue hearing aids. I have nothing to wear. She ain't doing your laundry either.
Perspective is everything, isn't it? That's Emerson Eggerichs. He wrote a book called Love and Respect. You've maybe heard of that book. Maybe some of you even here have read that book before as well, too. I've read the book, and it was one of those books I read that was this really big aha moment in my life. It really kind of opened my ideas and understanding on how to talk with my wife, how to relate with my wife. And I encourage you to pick a copy of the book up. We're going to reference it a few times today because there's, in particular, one thing he talks about in the book that's going to be of value to us. But as we begin this conversation, we start with the fact that men and women sometimes are wired differently. They hear things differently. They see things differently. And what we're going to learn is this, and this is your first set of fill-ins today if you're going to be following along in your teaching notes as well. The first thing we need to know as we kind of begin our conversation and our discussion today is this. Men are hardwired for respect. They are hardwired for respect and being respected. Women, on the other hand, respond to love. They respond to love, and in particular, affection. But one thing we have to realize in both cases is in all relationships, they require both. So what we're seeing here is while in all relationships they require both, men have a strong lean towards a desire for respect in any relationship that they have. And women, on the other hand, have a strong lean for love and affection in that relationship. I'll never forget having a couple in my office not too long ago, and they were kind of walking through a difficult time, and I remember stopping at one point, and I said to the guy, I said, listen, if you had a choice between love or respect, which one would you choose? And without missing a beat, he said, respect. And I thought, well, I get that because I've had to ask myself that question in my own marriage and my relationships as well, and I would have picked respect as well too. But I looked over at his wife and I said, what are you feeling right now? Well, what would you say or how would you answer that question? And I remember her looking at me, she says, I can't understand why anyone would choose respect over love. It was completely foreign to her. And that's the point of this whole thing, is that men have this deep felt need for respect. For men, there's this unwritten honor code that they hold to and hold other people to, this deep felt need for respect. But on the other hand, women have this deep felt need for love and affection in all of their lives, and it's hardwired into everything that they do. But unfortunately, this is where the problems begin to make their way into the relationship. This is where the tension builds. This need for women to have that love and affection, and this desire by men to have the respect that they so desperately need. And what the author talked about in this book is he talked about the problem that relationships can get into called the crazy cycle. There's this crazy cycle that relationships oftentimes get in, and it looks a little bit like this. Women want love and affection, but she perceives that her husband is not giving her the love and affection that she so desperately desires in this relationship. And so whether she means to subconsciously or she does it purposely, she begins to withdraw respect that she has for her husband. Maybe she begins to speak harder or not be as nice. And the husband then perceives this lack of respect and disrespect as breaking the code. And so he begins to withdraw that love and affection that she so desperately needs, which only makes her madder, and so she withdraws. You see, it gets to be this cycle that they get caught in. They call it the crazy cycle because it just keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going, and it's a trap. And so many couples have found themselves in this trap, and it's a vicious, vicious cycle that many of them have a hard time getting themselves out of, and they don't always see that they're in it. Here's what I know about this crazy cycle. Because it'd be quick to go, okay, great, Jason's just going to be talking about marriages this whole time. This is just going to be another marriage discussion. But no, here's what I found out. This crazy cycle that does happen in marriages sometimes, it can happen in all of your relationships. It can happen with coworkers. Even at the office, it can happen between the leaders and the employees. It can happen in family dynamics with brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and whoever it may be. It can happen at church. It can happen wherever people come to do life together, particularly in that dynamic of men and women doing life together. You risk this crazy cycle because no matter where we are, there's still that desire in men to have that deep felt need for respect in what they do. And women, there's still that desire to have care and affection and love. And while how I show care and affection to my wife hopefully looks very different than how I show it to each of you out there, because we have a healthy marriage, all right? You know, I'll let you deal with that image in your mind for a while. But yeah, yeah. Everyone's like, oh, now I need brain soap. Great. So I get it. But no, but you know what? But it's still there. There's still the need for love. There's still the need for respect in all of our relationships. So it's important we get a handle and understand what this cycle, this crazy cycle, is all about, and begin to ask ourselves, am I living in this cycle somewhere in my life? Am I in the midst of one of these? Now, this idea of love and respect comes from a verse in Ephesians chapter 5. It's part of a longer dialogue where Paul is dealing with many different types of relationships and explaining how those relationships should look like and how people should engage each other. But as we get down to verse 33 in Ephesians chapter 5, he has this to say kind of as some final thoughts. He says, however, each of you must also love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. Each of you must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. Now, there's a couple things I think we're going to need to tackle today about this word respect. Some things we're going to need to dive into and kind of figure out together. The first one is this. There's just a reality, if you've been in church for any length of time, respect is not a word we talk about very much. It's not something I could think back and say, how many sermons have I given on this word respect? And there's not a ton of times that I think it comes up, and yet it does weave itself in the Bible in many different places. The reason why is we're quick to talk about unconditional love. At the core of our Christian beliefs and who we are is this idea that God loved us so much, he sent his son Jesus to show us unconditional love. And in showing us that unconditional love was calling us to have unconditional love towards everyone else. And anyone who's marched down Christianity or is trying to become a follower of Jesus Christ and learn, most of you, if I looked out there and said, Jesus Christ is calling you to unconditional love, would shake your heads to me and say, absolutely, that's correct. I agree with that. We may not be doing it well, but we would say, yes, that is a part of Christianity, unconditional love. But to look at you and say, is there a such thing as unconditional respect? For many of you, this may be the first time you've ever heard this and could be a completely foreign concept to you, especially since our culture doesn't naturally gravitate towards this word. Unconditional respect is not something that we naturally gravitate towards. And for some of you, you might even say, time out, Jason, time out. Where does it even talk about respect in the Bible? And I say, well, it's in several places, but one in particular I want to look at today. Because the reality is this, most of us have no problem with this concept of unconditional love. However, unconditional respect is something completely different. In 1 Peter 2:17, Peter says this to his folks. He says, show proper respect to everyone. I want to say that together. Show proper respect to who? Everyone. One more time. Show proper respect to who? Everyone. Yeah. Show proper respect to everyone. Love the family of believers. Fear God. And at the end of that, this is in your sermon notes, he says something interesting. He says, honor the emperor. Kind of a random statement. Show respect to everyone. Love the family of believers. Now, what's interesting in this set of verses, by the way, is love and respect is listed in there as well. We see the concept of love and respect listed there. But then he mentions the emperor in Rome, and you're thinking, okay, that's nice. And we've talked about this before. It's easy to read passages sometimes, and you read through something, you're like, that sounds good, that's nice. And we keep reading, and we go on, and we don't necessarily pick up and understand all of the nuances and the depth of what's going on there. And this is one of those verses, because if we dive into this verse, if we try to understand what is the whole book of 1 Peter about, we begin to see this passage open up a little bit. Because the entire book of 1 Peter, the Apostle Peter is speaking to the Christians who are being scattered amongst the nations in the world and are running for their lives. Why? The emperor is trying to kill them. The emperor is after them. This is a time of trial and persecution for Christians, and Peter writes this entire letter about, whoa, hey, wait, don't go, stay, things are going to be fine, God is still on his throne. He's just trying to remind them of who they are. And so now you really begin to understand that he's got at the end of this passage, honor the emperor. He tells us to respect and honor him, which means, are you saying, Jason, we don't get to choose who we respect and honor? You don't. You don't even get to pick and choose who you respect and honor. Even the emperor. Which makes it really interesting when we bring that verse into our modern times and start thinking in our current political environment, don't we? Yeah, we're all squirming a little bit now, aren't we? Are you saying, Jason, that I have to love and respect and honor the current political leaders and people that are in place in the world around me? Yep. You do. Does that mean I have to agree with everything they do? Good heavens, no. No. But the Bible consistently seems more concerned with how you disagree than whether or not you agree with everything. Because how you disagree reveals a great deal about what's in your heart. How you disagree is enormously important. We're not always going to agree. But the verse calls us to respect who? Everyone is who we're called to respect in this verse. And man, I get it. This idea of unconditional respect, it may be, like I said, a completely new, foreign idea to you. And I get it. You may be sitting there going, I'm not even sure, Jason, I agree with you on this. I'm not sure where I'm at on this whole thing. And I say, that's no problem. Okay. It's a journey, and we take it step by step. All I'm asking you to do is as we learn together, to take the pieces of what we learn and pray this coming week and take it to the Bible and look over your teaching notes throughout the week and just ask God to continue to reveal His will more and more. And allow that journey to happen in your life. Now, there's a second reason we struggle. The first reason being we just don't talk about respect all that much. The second reason we struggle with respect, particularly unconditional respect, is this. I'm betting a lot of you out there, in many ways me included if I thought about it, have been taught along the path of life, you maybe even learned it at home, that respect is something that is earned. How many of you have taught and even had that thought? It's like, no, you have to earn my respect first before I give my respect. But we have to then take that statement to the Bible and ask, what does the Bible have to say about that? Does the Bible agree with that statement? Even if we go back to that verse in Ephesians chapter 5, I go back to that verse and I put it as in the New Jason version. We have that up there, the New Jason version up there. It says, however, each one of you must also love his wife as long as she's being respectful. And the wife must respect her husband as long as he has earned it and he deserves it. Is that what that verse said at first? No, I added those pieces on, but how many of us read that verse oftentimes through that set of lenses? Each one of you must love his wife. Yeah, as long as she's being respectful, I will. And the wife must respect her husband as long as he's earned it and he deserves it. It's not how that verse reads, is it? It doesn't have conditions placed on it. It calls for unconditional love. It calls for unconditional respect. And I love what the author had to say. Dr. Eggerichs, he said this in his book, Love and Respect. He says, when the wife flatly says her husband will have to earn her respect before she gives him any, she leaves the husband in a lose-lose situation. He's now responsible for both the love and the respect in the relationship. And it's not just the husband. It's true in your work lives as well. It's true in your relationship with brothers and sisters. It's true in your dating relationships. When you leave them with both, they're in a lose-lose situation. When you say they have to earn your respect, you put them in a lose-lose relationship. And here's what I know about healthy relationships, and this is so important that we understand this. Healthy relationships are not based upon earning. They're not. Healthy relationships aren't based upon earning. Because let's face it, if our relationship with God was based upon us earning His love and respect, every single person in this room is dead meat. Because the story of the Bible is you cannot earn God's love. There is nothing you can do, there is nothing you can say to earn God's love. We are all sinners. We've all missed the mark. And God gives his love freely to everyone, including you. It's unconditional love. It's unconditional respect. You can't earn God's love. You can't earn God's respect. You already have it. God loved you so much, he sent his son to show you what love looked like, to give you the freedom, to forgive you of your sins. He demonstrated his love. And so let me ask you something that's so very, very important. If God doesn't make you earn his love, why are you making someone else earn your love? Why are you making someone else earn your respect? Because here's the problem. When you make somebody else earn your respect, and you know the reality that God doesn't make you earn his respect, you have placed yourself above God. Do you see how bad that is? Are you somehow better than God? God doesn't make us earn his respect or his love. And so real quick, I want to go over what are some quick ways then, practically speaking, this week that we can show respect to other people. There could be many, but I just picked a few to get us started in this coming week that I think will be helpful to you. The first one is this: accept that people are imperfect. Accept that people are imperfect. We've said this many times, and I'll say it many times again. We are all broken creatures in need of a Savior. All of us got our junk. All of us mess up. All of us do things. Accept that people are imperfect. The second thing, focus on what they do well. Focus on what people do well. It's easy to get in that trap too of just negativity and always looking at the things that are wrong or seeing how someone could be better. And we get in that trap as well. Deliberately choose in the coming week to look at the people around you and through respect, tell them what they do well. Find those things that they do well and highlight those things. And when you do that, when you tell them what they're doing well and highlight those, you will then also look for opportunities to build someone up rather than tear them down. What are those opportunities to build people up around you? To help them understand that, like we sang in that song, that God makes beautiful things, including you. How can you help build someone up? The fourth one I would remind us of is this: speak well of this person at all times, especially when they're not around. Speak well of them at all times. No gossiping, no slandering. Remember, the Bible says your words have the ability to speak life or death. That's Proverbs 8:21. It does not say sticks and stones break your bones. It says life or death. Your words have the ability to tear someone down or to build them up. And so every conversation, every person you speak to this week, you have the opportunity to build them up, to focus on what they do well, to realize they're imperfect, but then to also speak well and realize your words matter. Which then gets me to just the reminder of the 3 T's that all of us need when we're communicating. 3 great reminders we need to remember when we're communicating in the coming week and with other people. And the first T is this: text. Text means what you say. As we just said, words matter. Your words are important. Do you take the time before you talk to this person to think through what I'm going to say, or are you just spatting out whatever's at the top of your head? Are you being deliberate in your words? Are you being careful? The text, what you say, matters. The next one is time. When you say it matters as well, too. I get it. Sometimes we're like, hey, I'm just going to say this thing, get it off my chest and move on. I feel great. Meanwhile, the other person's sitting over there melting. Is this the right time to say what you have to say? Can you have the maturity and the wisdom sometimes to realize, yes, we need to have this conversation, but it might be better off here. That maybe I need to have this conversation here, or maybe I need to be incremental in this conversation. It takes wisdom to know when to say it, but we need to be careful about when we say things. And the third one is your tone, how you say it. I will tell you this is true in my marriage, and it's true in just about every relationship I know of. How you say something can be more important than what you say. 1 Corinthians 13 would say that if I speak with the tongue of angels but have not love, I'm but a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal, right? In other words, you're just noise. Your tone and how you say something is enormously important. So in this week, what I'm challenging you to do is, you know what? Be careful what you say. Pay attention to when you say it. And check yourself on how you say it. Doing those things well will show respect to the people around us, will show that love that they need. I want you to work on that this week, if you could. Find those opportunities, find those places, not only in your house, not only maybe with your spouse or the person you're dating or a relative, but in your office, wherever it may be. Which gets us to our so what moment. Carrie, she's got a boss, and he's driving her nuts. He doesn't seem to care at all about her life and what's going on. He never asks. He just seems to care about the numbers and productivity and are you getting the job done? Ron's her boss. And Carrie's kind of had an attitude problem here lately. Her words are curt, kind of got that dark sarcasm. Her performance is down, and when she's confronted, she just kind of lashes back. It's everybody else's fault. This only makes Ron angrier because Carrie, she's feeling unloved and unappreciated. But Ron, on the other hand, doesn't feel that he's getting the respect as her supervisor he should be getting. And so because he's not getting the respect he thinks he should be giving, he's become cold. He's become unapproachable with her. And she sees that coldness and that unapproachable nature now as being unloving and uncaring. And so it only makes her angrier, and she only gets meaner, and she only gets more curt with her answers, which only makes him angrier. Guess what? They're in the cycle. They're caught in the crazy cycle. Ever happened to you at work before? Happens in marriages. It happens with relatives. It happens wherever, in particular, men and women are doing life and relationships together. And so what? The big question is this: how do you stop the crazy cycle? If you can think of a relationship or a situation you're in where I'm in that cycle, how do we stop this thing? What's it going to take? That conversation in Ephesians chapter 5 that we started with, where Paul said that husbands love your wives and wives respect your husbands. I mentioned it was part of a longer conversation, and it was. But it's interesting how he starts that conversation in Ephesians chapter 5. He starts it with a verse in Ephesians 5:21, where he says to the people at the church of Ephesus, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And if we're being honest, submit's another one of those words we don't naturally gravitate towards as a culture, is it? Submitting means putting someone else's wants, needs, and desires above your own. Submitting requires you humble yourself. Try to understand the other person. But here's what I know, and this is so important. The crazy cycle ends when one of the parties decides to submit. You want to end the cycle? The crazy cycle ends, that's your last fill-in for the day. The crazy cycle ends when one of the parties decides to submit. What submitting means is one of the parties says, I refuse to allow this crazy cycle to go on any longer. I'm drawing a line in the sand. I'm saying enough is enough. In a marriage, what it means is a husband says, even if I'm not getting the respect I want and the respect I think I deserve, I'm going to unconditionally love my wife anyways. In a marriage, it means a wife saying, even though I may not feel like I am getting the love and the affection that I want and I deserve, I insist on giving my husband the unconditional respect he deserves anyways. It's one of the parties standing up and saying, enough is enough is enough. It's going to stop here. And it's realizing it's not about earning and it's not about deserving. It's about us and our relationships. And one person, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's at church or school, wherever it may be, it's that person saying, enough is enough. I'm not returning back to this crazy cycle. And I've seen this happen too many times. I've seen that wife choose to say, I'm going to show that respect to my husband, even though I don't feel he's given me the love and the affection I want and crave. I'm going to choose today to respect him unconditionally. I've seen it happen too many times that husband at some point wakes up and says, I love you. That they begin to reciprocate and show that love back. And I've seen it happen too many times the other way around too, where the husband says, I may not feel the respect that I think I deserve or want or crave, but I'm today going to choose to unconditionally love my wife no matter what. And no matter good days, bad days, I'm choosing for the long haul to just love her. And what happens is over time, your example breaks through to the other one all too often. I've seen it happen several times. But it requires one party submit, humble themselves, and say no more. I'm going to stop the crazy cycle. That person says, I choose today to unconditionally love and respect this other person. And so I ask you, is there a relationship in your life that's stuck in the crazy cycle? Is there somebody you need to unconditionally love or unconditionally respect, even though you may not feel that they are reciprocating? And would you choose today to humbly submit yourself and choose to unconditionally love and respect them anyways, so that we can stop the crazy cycle and watch healthy marriages and healthy relationships move forward? Let's pray.